So I've kind of been wanting to post this for a while, but a combination of technical difficulties and residual fear have been preventing me from doing so thus far. Now though, it's the middle of the night, and I've got nothing better to do, so I figured I'd get this off my chest. I grew up with parents who were reasonable, loving people, but who were also more than a little paranoid when it came to the internet. Anything that allowed anonymous communication in any form was banned, point blank, from the household. Even Club Penguin wasn't allowed, because you could chat in it. Naturally, when I got my first laptop at age 12, it was a piece of crap, gotten only because all of my homework that year was online. The first thing I did was trying to talk to people online. I wasn't going in chat rooms or anything, because my parents' warnings still resonated with me, but I wasn't avoiding contact either. I ended up making a DeviantArt account. I know, cringe. Where I didn't do much posting. I lack artistic talent. In spite of this, however, I was contacted via private message by a man who I'll call Joker, because his profile picture was of the Joker. That should have been a warning sign in and of itself, honestly. Joker just started talking to me out of the blue. I think I'd commented on one of his pieces or something, and he reached out to me to thank me for my kind words. We started talking. It turned out we had a lot of common interests. We played some of the same games, liked the same cartoons. He seemed like a really, really nice guy. I think it was maybe a week or two in that the first uncomfortable thing happened, even if I didn't exactly think much of it at the time. The two of us shared a somewhat misanthropic view of the world, so there were a lot of dark jokes passed back and forth between us. Sometime about a week after we had first started messaging, he casually mentioned thinking that the world would be better off without him. I sent him a sad face and assured him that it wouldn't, as I quite liked talking to him. He didn't say anything more about it then, so I assumed that was it. It wasn't. Joker talked about suicide a lot. His talking about it quickly morphed from passing commentary to long graphic rants about how much he hated himself and wanted to die. What method would be the best for him to do so? I spent hours talking him down over chat, terrified that the one day I wouldn't be able to do enough, and he'd actually do it. His messages started to get creepy in a different way. He started telling me how grateful he was to have me, how no one had ever cared about him as much as I did, how important I was to him, how he couldn't live without me, how he'd just die if he were ever to lose me. He was beginning to be obsessed. Well, one day, a couple of months in, my laptop broke. It wasn't too bad, but it still took a couple of days before everything was back in working order. I logged back into DeviantArt to find dozens of messages, all from Joker. They started off normal enough, but quickly became frantic after I didn't respond. The last message he had sent was something along the lines of, "I can't take this anymore," followed by a link to a picture image. The image was a pair of slit wrists. The cuts were deep and fairly fresh-looking too, with red inflamed edges and the beginnings of an ugly scabbing just beginning to settle over the top. I was horrified. I quickly messaged him back, terrified that I'd just lost a friend, and he responded. "I thought I'd lost you," he said. "I thought you'd left me. I couldn't handle the pain without you. Don't ever do that to me again." I said I wouldn't, and he seemed relieved. He only got worse from then on. It reached a point where practically our every conversation consisted of him either professing his obsession with me, threatening suicide, or both. The stress was keeping me up at night. I was terrified that one day soon I'd open up the chat and never see anything again. I was utterly convinced it was my job to keep this man alive, and that I was failing miserably at it. Joker kept escalating, until one day, nearly a year in, he finally said something that frightened me so badly that I had to leave. Joker started talking about how I was the last good person left on this miserable planet, and stuff like that. He waxed poetic about how much he wanted to kill himself, and then he said he'd finally found a way to be truly happy. He said the only way he'd ever be able to find happiness was in killing himself and taking me with him. That way we would always be together, free from the cruel weight of the world. He started going into very detailed, very graphic descriptions of how he'd kill me. A lot of them involved carving out my heart, clutching it to his chest, and laying beside me as he took his own life, too. I was terrified. Enough so that I did what I should have done a long time ago, and finally deleted that account. For years following that incident, I never spoke to anyone online. Even to this day, actually, there's still a lingering sense of dread when it comes to online interaction. I don't know what his deal was, whether he was mentally ill or purposefully malicious, or some combination of the two. But whatever the case, I hope we never meet again. This happened last year, and it still gives me the creeps to think about it. I was leaving work and was on my way to a friend's house. My work is on the literal edge of town. It's pretty rural and gets really dead at night. My friends live even further away from my work, in where I guess you'd consider to be the country area. The road gets more and more desolate the closer you get to their house. I clocked out of work that day, went to my car, and called my friend to talk to her on the phone about something, while I drove to her and her boyfriend's house. I looked both ways before I exited the parking lot, but there was absolutely nobody else on the road that I could see. It was a pretty good distance, too. I had made it a mile or so down the road, when I saw headlights behind me and coming up fast. It was a full-size pickup truck that had been lifted, and he got so close to my car that all I could see out my back window was the Chevy badge on his grill. I thought he wanted to get past me, so I waved out the window for him to pass, using the suicide lane since the road was only 2 lanes here. Instead, he started laying on his horn. Mind you, I'm not a slowpoke driver. I was already doing 55 in a 45, so it's not like I was inconveniencing him with my speed. I told my friend what was happening, and she tells me to just keep going, that he'd probably leave me alone eventually. The man stayed glued behind me for another mile or so, occasionally honking some more. Eventually, he started turning his brights on for a few seconds, and then he started slowing down until we were a couple 100 feet apart. Then he'd floor it and fly up behind me really fast, like he was feigning rear-ending me. I was getting more sketched out at this point, and my friend was trying to calm me down, telling me to just keep driving. At this point, I was really scared that he was going to hit me, and I wanted to get away, but there were no businesses open this late and this far out from the city. In fact, there wasn't really any places that were going to be open anymore, just fields and some houses every now and then. I decided to floor it and try to outrun him, figuring my Corolla might not be a Formula 1 car, but it sure as hell was a lot quicker than an old pickup. I got up to 85 and kept an eye on him. He didn't seem to be trying to catch up. I felt a little safer and assumed he'd given up, so I dropped back down to about 60 and informed my friend that it worked and he was gone. I still had tunnel vision from the adrenaline, and didn't realize he was flying up behind me again, until he was barreling towards me doing probably 85 or 90. I realized he wasn't going to slow down, so I braced myself for the impact and told my friend he was about to rear-end me. Instead, he cut around me, missing my car by mere inches, and flew around to the front of me. He cut right in front of my car and slammed on his brakes, trying to get me to rear-end him instead. Thankfully, I was able to stop in time, and he started slowly continuing forward. He repeatedly stopped in the road for a few miles, almost like he was trying to bait me to pass him. My friend told me that her boyfriend was on the phone with the police and was keeping them updated, for me to stay on the phone with her as long as I could. After a while, I could see my friend's street sign, and she kept assuring me that her and her boyfriend were outside waiting for me to pull in, that the cops were already on their way. She told me to pull into the driveway and stay in the car until they were sure he was gone. He made what should have been a 10-second drive to the street a painstaking process because he kept stopping in front of me. The next part was my fault. I instinctively turned on my blinker, which let him know I was about to turn onto the road, so he immediately whipped up the curb to cut in front of me again. My friend's house is on the corner, so her and her boyfriend were able to see everything now. I had a bit of a ways to go before I got to her driveway. The truck stayed put in the middle of the road this time, and he wasn't moving, so I tried to go around him. As soon as I started to pass him, he floored it and cut to the left, nearly hitting my front end and blocking the road completely. I was feeling braver now that I knew help was on the way, and my friends were there too, so I laid on my horn and yelled some choice words and told him to move his ass. My friend and her boyfriend had gotten to the edge of the property, where we were by then, and I guess the driver took notice of them and slowly started moving out of the way. I pulled into her driveway as fast as I could and looked out the rear view mirror to see him slowly driving up to her driveway where he stopped. I couldn't see his facial features because it was so dark and he was kind of far away, but I could tell he was staring at me the whole time. My friends had gotten to my car just as he got to the driveway, and I watched my friend approach the truck. I heard her say to him, "You need to leave now. The cops are on their way." They stared at each other for a few seconds before he slowly continued on. Her neighborhood is a giant loop, and he never exited, so we felt adventurous and sneaked around the block in search of where he had gone while we waited on the cops. We found the truck parked at a house and returned just as the police arrived. We told the cops where the truck was, and the officer returned informing us that there was no answer at the door, and he left. Her boyfriend, who had lived there forever, nor his mother, recognized the truck or the man. If I recall, his mother even knew the people who lived at the house the truck had parked at. As far as I'm aware, he wasn't seen again. Because I'm a very small female who was alone at almost midnight, we all assumed he had watched me leave work and was trying to bully me into wrecking my car so I would pull over and he could abduct me. We think once he realized the cops were involved, he parked the truck in someone's otherwise empty driveway and left it there to hide in a nearby field until the cops left the area. So I'll give some backstory on this. The house that I'm currently living in has an attic, and I lived in this house for the past 8 years since I was 13 years old. One night during a bad winter, where it was constantly raining and had strong winds, I heard boxes being moved in the attic. I freaked out and laid awake the whole night, listening to these weird sounds coming from above. In the morning, I confronted my parents, asking if it was them. They both denied it, and had no reason to go into the attic. They only go into it around Christmas time because that's where we store the tree, Christmas decorations, and things we don't use but don't want to throw away. I told them I heard noises, and they both brushed me off and claimed I was just hearing things. The next night, I heard the sounds again, and the next night, and the night after that. For the whole week, I told my friends at school, and they said someone must be in my attic. I told them it was impossible. The only way into my attic is by grabbing the ladder from the shed in the garden, coming into the house, and next to the laundry there's a hole, with a panel covering it. That's how you get into the attic. After that week, when the weather cleared up and I didn't hear any more noises coming from the attic, I simply forgot about it, until I forgot my key one day. I called my dad, who was at work, and asked him if there was a spare key hidden around somewhere I could use to get in. He told me there was a way of getting into the attic via the roof. He told me about a large panel on the roof that could be removed so you could get into the attic. It was also quite easy to get onto the roof, and my brother has done many times with ease to rescue our cat or balls that have ended up there. My blood went cold. Someone could have gotten into the attic. Someone could have been in our attic for a week. And then a dark thought crossed my mind. What if he was still in there? I noped out hard and walked around the neighborhood for 3 hours instead while waiting for my dad to come home. When he did, I told him about that week I heard noises up there and how the man could have gotten in. Again, he brushed me off. On and off, the next few years were filled with the occasional horror moments. I have 2 glass doors in my room that face the backyard, and we have lights-on motion sensors in the garden. One night while I was sleeping, my dog asleep next to me, and my back to the glass doors, my room was suddenly flooded with light. Someone or something was in the garden. I didn't think too much of it. Maybe a stray cat, I thought. Then is when my dog started growling. He's a very sweet and timid dog that even our kitten bullies. I froze. I had never heard him growl like this before, and that's when I heard a tapping on the glass door. I wanted to cry. I was terrified if whoever was tapping on the glass wanted in, the glass wasn't going to stop him. The tapping continued for a few more minutes. I laid still, pretending to be asleep. Then I heard the doorknob being tested, and then my dog started barking really deep and menacing. Whoever was there finally fled. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I was scared he was going to come back. In the morning, my dad yelled at me due to the dog barking waking him up. I cried and told him about what had happened, but once again he brushed me off. Another time, when we changed the locks because my brother had lost his wallet with his keys in them, and our address was in his wallet, my dad gave me my new key for the front door. I put it on my bed and went shopping with my dad and brother. When I came back, it was gone. I searched everywhere. It never turned up. I ended up taking the spare key my dad had hidden in the garden and pretending it was my main. He would later put another key in the garden which was hidden under my dog's bed. This is important for later. Other things happened as well, but I think for now I've given enough backstory. This was about 2 months ago. My dad travels for work sometimes. When he does, my brother stays with our mom, and I look after the house and the animals. My dad had been gone for 5 days when this happened. I had left the main computer on, and it was just on the Google homepage. I went to bed and woke up 2 hours later. My stomach was killing me. I rushed to the bathroom and threw up. I had made a bit of a mess, so I went to the kitchen. I have an open-planned kitchen, so it's also a dining room and a small living room in this big room. The main computer is also there. To grab a mop and bucket, and that's when I saw the computer screen on. Not dark like when you don't touch your computer for a while and the screen goes black. Curious, I went over to look at it, and saw that it was on YouTube, on a random music search page with the music typed into the search bar. I was freaked out. I clicked back, and it went to a few different music things before going on a website of a uni my brother was considering going to. I had taken him to the opening day only a few weeks ago. I clicked back again, and it went to my email. Then it went to my university homepage. I was beyond freaked out. All I could think was someone was in my house. They had used my computer and gone searching for all of this stuff. But why? I quickly grabbed a knife and headed to the main living room which is next to the front door. I called my best friend who lived a 30-minute drive away, and she told me she was coming to pick me up right away. I searched the living room while on the phone with her, and I told her that if I screamed to call the police right away. After making sure the living room was safe, I paced around waiting for her. I noticed that my cats were freaked out and were hiding, something they never do. When she arrived, finally, we searched my house. I violently was kicking doors open and yelling if someone was in the house that I would stab them. There was no one inside. I was still freaked out, and my best friend told me I was spending the night with her at her house. I felt bad leaving my animals, but I couldn't bring them due to her having dogs that didn't like cats. As we were leaving, a thought hit me. What if the person was in the attic? My friend told me there was no way we were going to search it, and grabbed me. I didn't call the police, and my dad arrived home the next day. I told him what had happened last night, and he laughed at me and brushed it off once again. I do believe there is, or at least was, someone living in my attic. I'm very scared to be left home alone at night. I'll update if anything else happens, and I do plan on moving out next year. Update. So the attic has been explored and we found nothing. I decided against calling my friends, and thought I would just explore the attic myself while my family was home. I told my dad and my brother I was going up to get the Christmas decorations. My brother instead volunteered and went up. I stood by the ladder and my dad came for a while too, to laugh at my brother struggling to get the decorations. The only weird thing is my brother found a suitcase that was open. It was empty and was meant to be. This is weird because my dad is really fussy about spiders and dust, and all the other boxes and things are duct taped shut and sealed. So why was the suitcase open? It turns out my dad had put the suitcase up there a few months before his trip overseas, due to buying a new suitcase but not wanting to throw out the old one. I had been at university that day, so I didn't know this. I only know this because I asked when he went in the attic. He told me he didn't go into it, he just popped the panel and slid the suitcase in. He didn't seem concerned that it was open and shrugged it off right away. I might be completely reaching and totally paranoid, so take this with a pinch of salt. But I have an identical suitcase to the one in the attic. However, mine is filled with all of my childhood. I have all my old school uniforms from every school I've ever been to. I have old pictures, CDs, diaries. It used to live under my bed, until I got a new one and it would no longer fit. It clogged up my room for a while. I complained a few too many times about having no space in my room anymore, so my dad told me to just put it in the attic and to stop complaining. I told him I would. Think of that as you may, I found it really weird that the suitcase in the attic was open. I have nothing else to say about this, and I'm sad there's no evidence or anything to prove to my dad. Also, a lot, nearly all I think, of people reading this have said what a shit dad I have, and yeah, I know. I have so many stories about him and my mom. I also have another Let's Not Meet story where a friend's house I was staying at got broken into. When I got home and told my parents, they just shrugged their shoulders and told me not to go back. I'm planning on moving out as soon as possible. I'll place some trust in the police and call them if something happens. I'm buying locks for my door and cameras. I always have a knife on hand when I'm alone at night, and I'm not afraid to stab someone if I have to. I would like to say thank you to everyone who read this and gave me advice. I am listening to it. And to those who say I have let this go on for so long, when you have parents who brush you off about everything, you eventually brush things off too. I hope you all stay safe out there. A couple of years ago, I, 21 and female at the time, went on a solo trip to Hong Kong to visit a friend who I knew through working at Walt Disney World and Universal Studios. I ended up staying with a very kind family through my church. The father traveled for business, and the mother homeschooled their 4 young daughters. They lived in a small developing town near an army base. One morning I went to the end of their street, their home being the second home on the street, to wait for the bus. I made a point to arrive well before the bus so that no one from the vehicle could see where I was staying. I've been assaulted before, so I'm always alert and ready. As I boarded the bus, I noticed 4 very attractive men sitting together mid-bus, 2 to a row and speaking in heavily accented English. I made my way to the very back of the bus, as is custom in Hong Kong if you're very young or able-bodied, which meant I sat in a 5 to 6 person row all the way to the left that was completely empty. As I was sitting down, I noticed something that set me on edge. The 4 men switched to speaking in what I think it was Russian. My whole body screamed at me to get off the bus. I would have too if I was staying at a hotel in the city, but I wasn't. The faces of that sweet family kept flashing in my mind, and I knew that if I got off there it would put them at risk. I sat down and put my earbuds in and pretended to read a book. As the bus began to pull away, the 4 men all came and sat next to me. I wanted to cry. I was originally on my way to see the Big Buddha, but I knew that if shit was about to go down, getting on a small bus to a middle-of-nowhere town would be a big mistake. I decided to skip over my stop and go to the main ticket and transport center. I've been in Hong Kong for about a week now, and thankfully I already knew the stops. I figured that if these guys were harmless, I could just go to an anime mall in Mongkok and spend the day there. If they turned out to be sketch, I knew I had to go to Disney where I would be safe, because at the time I was a cast member. The man sitting closest to me turned to me and started asking me questions. "What's your name? What brought you here? Who are you staying with? Are you traveling solo today?" I fed them lie after lie. I told them that my name was Danica and that I was staying with my boyfriend's family, who lived there and his father works at the army base. I told them I was going to a dim sum restaurant to meet his mother for lunch, as she works in the city teaching kids English. After every answer, the men would talk amongst themselves in Russian. Nope. I don't like that. I kept trying to go back to my book, but they kept asking me questions. How old are you? Where in America do you live? One of the guys I noticed was typing away on his phone quickly after I gave answers. After what felt like an eternity, the bus pulled into the transport center and I got off. I knew I had to be quick. From where the bus drops off, there's quite a walk to the entrance of the building. I knew that if I wanted to escape, I needed to avoid all cars, being alone, and I needed to get on the train before they did. I bid them all goodbye and got off the bus. I pulled my octopus card out of my pocket and walked with the group of people that got off our bus. That is, until we got near enough to another group that I'd speed up a tad to join them. I did that all the way until I got to the entrance, all the while making sure not to look back and not to seem agitated. I wanted them to think I was dumb and vulnerable. I made it onto the train without incident, and I was starting to feel really silly until I heard, "This one, hurry, hurry." I glanced over and there they were. All 4 of them raced into the train, eyes fixed on me. Their whole demeanor had changed. The man who was texting before was on his phone talking to someone. One of the other men was taking photos of me. They looked determined and smug. I smiled sweetly and looked away. I wanted to crumple and scream, but I knew I had to play dumb. As we neared the Sunny Bay Disney stop, I knew I needed to put distance in between us. At each stop, as people were jostling on and off, I'd move a car away and they'd follow. I made sure to seem oblivious. I casually would look out the window and bob my head as if listening to music. I prayed over and over for the strength to get through this. I knew that once we pulled into Sunny Bay, I needed to run out of the car fast to beat the line to bag check. I couldn't remember if any of them had bags, and I didn't want them waiting for me on the other side. I knew that they were expecting me to get off at Mongkok, not Sunny Bay. I was hoping this would throw them off their game. We pulled into Sunny Bay, and I shot out of the car so fast, I practically ran to the bag check. It's frowned upon, and security looked at me like I was crazy. But sure enough, all 4 guys came spilling out of their car. They looked mad. I thanked the bag check, and ran, and I mean Tom Cruised it out of there. I knew they knew, and fuck them. I was not letting them take me. Thankfully, I had already visited Disney Hong Kong twice before this day. Once on my own, and once with the girls. I knew that the guest entrance was a bit of a walk. I decided to stay at the park for most of the day. I want to say that the rest of the trip was worry-free. A few days later, though, a man tried to force me into his car. I'll write that story up in a separate post if anyone's interested. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, be sure to let me know what you guys think, and please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. I know some people have also had some problems about videos not appearing in their sub box, so please make sure to hit that little bell if you guys want to always be notified of when my next video comes out. As always, links to all of my social media will be in the description of the video below. You can find links to my Twitter, Gmail, Twitch, and Facebook accounts. So if you guys ever want to talk to me, just go ahead and shoot me a message on any of those, and I'll try to respond to your message as soon as possible. I'm also going to start trying to stream on Twitch a little bit more, so if you guys have notifications on there, you'll be notified right away when I go live. I might also try to do some on YouTube, but I haven't decided yet. I'm still kind of trying to decide what kind of streams I want to do. Anyways, if you guys have a story you would like to send in, or if you have a story you would like to suggest that I read, go ahead and send me a message on any of those links in the description below. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the title, how you would like to be credited, and any genres that the story might have, if it does have one. If you guys are curious about the music used in this video, go ahead and take a look in the description below as well. I always put all of the music in the order in which it appears in the video, and I also have links to the artists as well. Last but not least, I also have a Patreon if you guys feel like you want to contribute to the channel a little bit. But of course, as always, it is never required, and you will never have to pay for watching any of my videos, so that's just something you do if you feel like it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please be sure to leave your feedback in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you very much.